Good afternoon to all our viewers and welcome to Live at the Watering Hole, where we start out at Old Donyo this afternoon, where we have one of our favorite visitors to the watering holes this time of the day, the African savanna elephant. Now my name is Jaap Potgieter and I'll be your host this afternoon. And of course, if it starts out this good, I'm sure we're going to have a very, very good afternoon. Now, just by having a quick look at this group, it looks like these are all males. A few of the larger boys in the area, I'm sure. And they've probably been feeding around the area most of the morning and now decided to come down for their drink. And this is usually where it gets interesting. Watering holes are personally one of my favorite things, because you can watch some interesting behaviors, you can get to learn more about the group dynamics of a herd, individual characters, and see their personalities. And you can see this afternoon one is standing right in the water. He looks like most of them actually look like they have been using quite a bit of water. Now I'm assuming it's quite a warm day there at Old Donyo. It looks a little bit drier than the last time I saw. And I'm sure there's been lots and lots of movement around this watering hole. But just a reminder to all our viewers that we are live and we are interactive, and you can send through your comments and questions to our social media platforms. They appear there on the bottom left of the screen, and any of those you can send us whatever you like to talk about. You can ask me questions. I do enjoy the questions. They are also a big learning curve for me in a way that I build my knowledge, and often each person has their own interesting factor about what we're looking at. Well, it looks like there's a cloud moving over. You can see the bright sunshine is a little bit dimmed, but it looks like the one elephant is just standing with his back in towards all the others, not minding too much. And they also don't seem to mind too much, because it looks like they are drinking. Now, generally speaking, when a bunch of male elephants like this get together, you'll find sometimes some of them are a little bit more picky over their space, like we're seeing here. You can see his younger one on the right is getting pushed out of the way, and it looks from that elephant coming in at the back. Might be an older member. Maybe it's just a sign of respect, but it might also just be that they are not really keen on getting too bumpy with each other. So Sandra is posting our first question for the afternoon, and she is asking a very interesting question, and I think a very important question. Sandra is asking, what is the most noticeable difference between male and female elephant? Now, Sandra, in short, to answer your question, is size. And then of course, if you look at that elephant there on the left hand side, you can see the good old fashioned way looking at the plumbing is also a way, but that is not always visible, because if we compare that elephant that happened to be standing in a position that we can clearly see his sex, if we look at all the others, we don't really see any clear indication. But generally for me it would be size, the size of the head especially, and then a very important factor is the base of the trunk, the space between the tusks. Generally with the bull elephants, they do tend to have tussles, they do tend to fight. They fight using their tusks and pushing and wrestling each other with their heads. so therefore they have a much broader base between the two tusks in the upper jaw and the base of the trunk, and that's quite visible. They also have very large rounded foreheads. If we look at this elephant facing us broadside, he is now right in front and on the left hand side, you can see he's got quite a rounded forehead, and that looks a little bit different in the females. The females generally have more of a cornered or a hooked forehead, almost like a 90-degree angle. But in all honesty, if you do see younger bulls in and amongst the group, they can be a little bit tricky to tell apart at a distance. So it's always important to have a good, careful look and use as much as possible information available to sex an elephant. But generally males are a little bit bulkier, larger, and they do tend to grow quite a lot bigger. Lawrence Dube is asking another interesting question about the elephants pertaining to their ears. Lawrence is saying good morning to you, Lawrence, and asking what the significance of the ears, the huge ears of the elephant is. And interestingly enough, it's also one of the main differences between, or main apparent differences between the African savanna elephant, as these species are known, compared to the Asian elephant, which is more of a forest dweller, generally speaking. But yes, the African elephant has a very large flat ear, like almost the same size or bigger than the entire head and down towards the base of the trunk. Now, besides elephants having excellent hearing, and they can move into very, very low frequencies, and they do use a communication that is inaudible to human ears, but the size of the ears generally does not have too much to do with that. They have external ear openings, but the most commonly held theory is that the size of the ears not only increase the surface area, which helps with body temperature regulation, but it also helps the elephant to generally keep cool in the very, very warm and sometimes humid climate of Africa. And you can see it covers quite a good part of the shoulders. They constantly flap these ears, especially on hot days. The ear is quite a thin part of the body in terms of its skin compared to the rest of the body, and it's got lots and lots of veins and arteries running through it. So on a hot day, by fanning it like that, the ear cools down, and all that blood that gets transported through the ears tends to cool down and go back towards the brain and the rest of the body a little bit cooler. They also tend to wet them. They put a lot of mud behind the ears, water behind the ears. Hopefully we might get to see that at some point today. We got another question from Robert. Robert is saying, is it really hot in Kenya? Saying that it is really hot in Kenya, and asking if Ellies do want to mud wallow. Yes, indeed, Robert. They definitely do like to mud wallow. I don't think, from the looks of it, doesn't look like there is too much mud in this watering hole. I know this is a man-made watering hole, and water is supplied through the pump. And you can see they often go for the water outlet specifically, but these elephants certainly look like they did wet themselves properly, and if they get the chance to find some mud, they will definitely cover them. Generally speaking, elephants almost always carry evidence of mud wallowing and dust bathing within an area on a hot day. It's like an elephant's skin, like some of the other large pachyderms, tend to be a little bit grey or appear grey to us, but they generally take on the hue of the color of the soil within a particular area. And now we're seeing something interesting develop. Looks like there was the elephant in the water backed off a little bit as the other one approached, and I am assuming that he was coming towards the water outlet. Sometimes we do see these elephants contest for it a little bit, but they generally appear quite respectful to each other and await their turn. Saw one walking off, but these guys on the right are seemingly waiting for the rest. Now, something also interesting is the one elephant bull there at the back in the middle, with his head standing at a angle. His head doesn't look as rounded as some of the others, his forehead. Now that is more indicative of what most female elephants' forehead would look like. To get back to Sandra's question from earlier, that is one of the differences we would normally associate with male and female, but as I said, it's not a given, and it depends on an individual elephant's genetics and morphology or shape. So I would say that is definitely a bull elephant, a male, and maybe not be as old as some of the others here. And then if we look, oh, okay. That was a bit more insistent. So clearly that elephant wasn't appreciating the invasion of his personal space there. Sometimes you do find it. These guys also know each other so well. They do spend a lot of time. Male elephants, younger male elephants join older male elephants. They tend to have different dietary requirements and likes and needs, and they often move away from herds, doing their own thing. And for company, they often join other males within certain areas. And over the years, they do tend to get to know each other and learn from each other, but with that also comes a bit of frustration, I would say, in certain instances. Kind of like the same situation one might have between very familiar old friends. Not shy to make sure that the others don't encroach on their personal space. And sometimes you also have them just being in a funny mood, playing with each other. So we got a question from Spaz Yankov. Good to see that Spaz is back on this afternoon and watching the show. How different is the sense of hearing of elephants compared to ours? Well, generally speaking, elephant hearing enables them to hear much lower frequencies than humans. Where humans generally can hear a little bit higher than elephants, but it also depends. In some cases, elephants cover more or less the same range as we do, and then also a little bit lower. And because of that enables them to communicate over quite a large distance. So generally speaking, from what I understand, is that humans can hear frequencies from about 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, where the elephant's prime hearing tends to fall between 14 hertz up to about 12,000 hertz. So they can communicate through infrasonic rumbles, seismic vibrations, which they can feel through their feet, and they tend to go very, very low and communicate over multiple kilometers, where for humans also we tend to lose our hearing as we age quite significantly in some cases. So it is a very, very interesting thing. We don't always think, when we think of animals hearing better than we do, we don't necessarily always think about lower. We often just think that they can hear fainter sounds and much higher pitch sounds, but yes, pitch is a huge thing within hearing, or the frequency of a sound wave. So yeah, so another interesting thing that I've come across is that apparently there is a relation to some extent between hearing higher frequencies and the space between the ears, so the size of an animal or creature's head. So for instance, bats are really small. They've got quite a small space and very large ears. Small space between the ears, very large ears. They can hear massively high frequencies, where elephants have a very, very large space between the ears, large head, but also relative. That's probably quite normal. And hence they can hear much lower frequencies. Oh, and here we have a zebra. That's quite a pleasant surprise. What a beautiful animal indeed. I love zebra. You can see there's a little bit of agitation within his approach and demeanor. It looks like it's quite windy here, actually. I haven't really noticed that earlier, but you can see that tail flicking not just for all the flying insects, but I'm pretty sure that's also a sign of its agitation as it awaits to take a chance and take a drink from the water. Who knows where this zebra came from? Might have also come from quite a distance away. And finding the elephants, knowing that it might take a while before he gets his chance. That is something that we do notice occasionally. I've seen a couple of times here at Aldonia where the elephants don't mind the other creatures drinking, but an elephant is an imposing creature. Oh, there we go. The zebra took off quite quickly. You can see even the elephant is like a little bit unsure of why. And then of course there's an air of nervousness in general when the plains game come down to the water to drink. Just look at those trunk tips of these two moving up and down gradually. There's so much going on when elephants look like they're just standing like that. They're testing the air. They're inspecting each other. They're also curious about other creatures and their habits. But we have another question from Robert. Robert is also asking about the elephant teeth and about the changes in their teeth as they grow older. So generally speaking, Robert, like a lot of other animals, elephants as they grow also have quite a bit of change in their diet. Of course, they start out drinking milk like most mammals, and they start eating a little bit of vegetation from an earlier age, and more as they grow old, up until eventually they eat very large amounts of wet vegetation and dry vegetation depending on the time of the year. Oh, that is a very characteristic sound of elephants, especially bull elephants. Sometimes it might be the only thing that alerts you to the presence of an elephant in the thick bush, but that was an elephant fart. I see the one elephant's dust bathing. You can see some giraffe moving in, hanging around. It's getting nice and warm. And the elephant dust bathing might be an indication that there might be some movement, which I think some of the other animals would be very happy about. So often if they've had their fill of water, it gets very hot, and they might decide to move into the shade of a big tree, which maybe we get to see. But Robert, generally speaking, to get back to Robert's question with the teeth, so generally speaking, elephants tend to have 6 sets. So elephants have incisors, which is what their tusks are at the top on the upper jaw, and they protrude from under the lip, and that's what we see. So the tusks are teeth, or teeth is a tusk, or a tusk is a tooth, and those grow very, very long. And as the elephant has evolved over the years, these tusks are used for very, very important evolutionary tasks like obtaining food and protection and defense. But their molars, both on the upper and lower jaws at the back, they get 6 sets throughout their life. And as they grow in age, at different ages, the molars wear down gradually, and the older set gets replaced by a new set. And generally the last set is usually around about somewhere just after 40, 45 to 50, and that set is usually their last set. If you have to see, or if you get to see elephant jaws of a very old elephant, it looks like they've only got one tooth in the back of the jaw. Those get ground down. You can imagine eating bark and chewing on branches. It's quite they really get put through the works. So they eventually ground down, and often older elephants tend to gradually start to lose condition as they get much older, because they cannot afford to eat the proper diet that they need, and eventually they kind of die because they become so weak and through a lack of nutrition. We got another question from James Hoffman. James Hoffman is asking a very interesting question. What adaptation animals have got, or what adaptation we as humans have lost, that enables animals to drink dirty water and be fine, whereas we get sick? So James, that's a very, very interesting question that I have to be honest, I don't exactly know the answer to, but it's definitely something I'll have a look into, because I'm sure there would be some fascinating fascinating things or aspects to the answer of this question. However, I do know that generally speaking, they grow up in a certain area, their gut becomes so used to it. Often animals' guts are full of parasites. Their livers are also well adapted to handling certain conditions. And generally speaking, I think also with humans, our stomachs have become so sensitive because of our highly specialized diets. We also omnivores. We've also changed and processed food so much over the last hundreds of years that we've got to a point where our stomachs are just not as robust anymore. Having said that, we still have quite strong stomach acids, and I think we have to give ourselves more credit, but we can, if we have to, survive on dirtier water. We've also, through the use of technological age, like the use of fire, boiling, we've adapted to drinking certain waters and probably lost the ability to handle certain bacteria present within water. Our livers as well, where I think with elephants out of necessity, other animals out of necessity being present and not utilizing technology to adapt or change their food before consumption, but literally taking it as it is. They have evolved with protection measures. They've also got incredibly strong immune systems. So basically they've adapted with it. They haven't changed. We have over the years, and because of our change in diet and ways of preparing food, our immunity to dirty water has probably waned because of that. But it would be interesting to find out a little bit more and have a look into that. So that's a great question. Having said that, there are cases that animals also get sick from drinking certain water. There is a type of cyanobacteria called green algae, which in certain conditions builds up in some watering holes. Look at this. The zebra has taken the plunge. And you can see, look at that left back foot. It's just a little bit up, ready to go should it need to. But it was so thirsty that it cannot wait any longer. And the elephants are almost staring at him like, oh, okay. What is he doing? Why is he so jittery? Quite an interesting contrast here in the behavior between these two species. Obviously very different in size and nature. But you can see it's like a more jittery, spooked, nervous demeanor of the zebra versus the very calm, curious behavior of the elephant bulls. Probably a clear indication of how the size, the variation in size affects animals' position within nature. Generally speaking, the larger animal has the right of way. The smaller animals tend to, just their general size, tend to put them at greater risk of predation, especially during rather vulnerable moments, like when they are taking a drink around the watering hole. And you can imagine an elephant big and strong, no real natural predators out. If it's an adult, it can just lower its trunk and slurp up water. Doesn't even really have to look around too much. Where zebra, the moment it lowers its head and it's close to the water while drinking, it kind of affects its hearing, its sense of smell, as well as its sight, with its head lowered. But it does have a wide field of vision, which helps it to spot approaching danger at an angle. Now, Josh Drowned is asking, what vegetations won't elephants eat? Josh, that is a very good question. I have actually, it's usually asked the other way around, like what do elephants eat, and you often, like surprisingly, you often find that when given the chance, elephants will generally eat anything. I do notice that there are some trees that they tend to leave alone, they don't really go for, but it also a clear indication of the zebra's nervousness there. These three elephants are almost like the guardians to this watering hole, just watching animals come and go, seeing how they would react. But Josh, I don't know, depending on a particular area and place, I'm pretty sure that they would go for whatever's available. I have noticed though that occasionally you find methods of prohibiting elephants to make their way into certain areas, and one of those methods are things like chilies. So people plant chilies on the outskirts of their crops.
The Masai Mara in February 2027 with your favorite Wild Earth guides. This is an extraordinary safari opportunity. You'll stay at the exclusive Kobe Mara, a private villa in the action-packed Northern Mara. Your hosts for this fun-filled safari are David Gigi Gitu, Cedric Dold, and me, James Henry.
My name is David.
I have a wealth of experience being in African bushes for so many years. It gives me a lot of joy when I am able to translate what is happening on the ground.
You're looking good. Jumbo to all of you. Let's go.
Before you go back home, as my guest, you're going to take home a memorable safari experience.
We know that adverts pay our bills, but you don't necessarily like them. So, this is a fantastic way to stop being interrupted. Sign up today and you'll get instant access to wildlife. 24/7, ad-free, live and on demand. No pesky commercials, no rude interruptions, just wild Africa exactly as it unfolds. Wild Earth Explorers, wilder together.
We got a question from Moonlight at Midnight saying, we see fantastic variety of animals at these watering holes, but are snakes ever seen at these places? Oh, Moonlight at Midnight, I'm sure they do, or they are seen. I don't actually recall seeing one. No, I have actually. I believe I saw a cobra on one of the shows once near a watering hole, but they are not seen very often indeed, and I think it would be quite a rare thing to see, although I'm pretty sure that they do make their way around here. Snakes also have water requirements. The other thing with snakes is they're quite tricky to spot, and there might be snakes in there under those trees or bushes in the back, hiding in the thicker vegetation. If it's very hot in the middle of the day, often they try to find a little bit of shade. Snakes is a reptile and therefore has to regulate their body temperature. Oh, that elephant shook his head, and he seems to be done with the watering hole. Whether that was the general conditions, this one as well. Maybe they were a bit frustrated that their older friend. They've waited long enough. It's hot enough out now, so now they're moving to the shade. By the looks of it, he might also be going. Now that was very, very... Oh, and look at that giraffe there in the back. I can almost see it smiling. It is definitely on its way straight to the water to try and utilize this little gap. And it looks like there's quite a breeze that's picked up. And maybe that is the reason why the elephants actually moved. But let's see. Now I think that herd of zebra and the giraffe will come down. But to get back to Moonlight at Midnight's question, you don't see snakes often at the watering holes. I don't think it would be a complete surprise to see one, but you definitely don't see them often. And Kenny is asking, what is the worst animal injury that I've ever seen, and that they survived without the vet's intervention? Kenny, that is a good question. I've actually recently had that question from someone else. Not on the show, but just in general one day, speaking to a few students. And to be honest, I think we often don't give wild animals enough benefit of the doubt when they have injuries. We got to remember that these animals are extremely adaptable. They are very resilient. That is why they are wild animals, and they have to deal with a variety of circumstantial issues on a daily basis. Just to think about extreme heat and weather, insects, biting insects like zebras, finding water, walking long distances to find water, competing for water. You can see, look how thirsty these zebra were. We don't know, they might have been, well, they've been waiting at least for the last 40 minutes since the show started for the elephants to move off to come in. So I have seen on zebra in particular, zebra is quite a tough animal. I remember seeing a male zebra with skin from its back torn and pulled down, like muscles exposed, and it was pulled down almost all the way onto its haunches, and it looked terrible. And I remember we were, at that time, the place I was working, we put in a request to the Conservation Management Authority in the area to try and see if they would intervene. And it was difficult because it was an open system, and chances of seeing that zebra again would have been tricky. And they said they would send somebody out to come and have a look should it be found again. And then I never actually saw that zebra again. This is also something I like. When lots of animals gather like this, you often find that they tend to be quite nervous and react to each other's movements. But after that happened, I saw that zebra about 6 months later again, and you could see that it had a severe injury, but the animal was fine. And I was very, very surprised. And I always mention this when people ask about their resilience. I do think that there's a lot of these animals that without the help of a veterinarian they can and will survive. Now, as we see, there's one zebra here, this one right in front, the one turning away. She looks like she's got a funny little notch in her mane and around her neck. And that is also something we see sometimes. Animals with snares. Now, for those of you unfamiliar about snare poaching is a way that poachers set up wire traps to trap or ensnare animals. Oh, here comes an elephant. This should be interesting. And when that happens, it does great damage to an animal's either leg or neck. And in that case, veterinarian intervention might be asked for, because that is human induced. But generally speaking, any naturally occurring injury will be left in most areas. And if an animal doesn't get taken out through predation, there's always a chance that they might survive. And there's so much zebra around here now that these elephants are almost taken aback. You can clearly see the herd mentality. There we go. That's quite a clear view. Look at that zebra's neck. You can see it looks like it was squeezed. You can see it looks like definitely a healed wound. I would say that is very likely a old snare wound. And by the looks of it, it must have been quite a severe one as well. Not only that, but that zebra's tail also doesn't look as furry as some of the others. Zebras can be quite mean to each other, and they can injure each other, especially the males, young ones, but that is a very particular wound, and that would have definitely needed some veterinary intervention. Problem with snares is wire snares. Animals can't take it off, and as time goes along it cuts into the skin, often onto the bone. And on some occasions it even gets covered by new skin growth, and then it's within that animal. So to remove it, you have to put the animal under anesthetic and physically cut it out, and then clean the wound, and that's it, and then leave it, and then hope for it to recover. And most of the time they do. PremQMR is asking, why do female African elephants have tusks but Asian females don't? That's a good question. PremQMR, I do not know. Maybe it might be an evolutionary adaptation for diet. Asian elephants generally live in areas with a lot of more softer plant material. So I wouldn't know, to be honest. Also a very interesting question, and something that I'll have to have a look at and do a bit of research on. I know that in some areas in Africa, especially in Botswana and certain regions, down in the Eastern Cape in South Africa, due to a low amount of soil nutrients and to past historical human actions, the genetics have been completely annihilated out of the area, and you find that there's often tuskless females and only males have tusks. In some cases the males might have small tusks, but they do have. So there could be various reasons. Not sure if that might be the reason with Asian elephants. I know that with Asian elephants, like, females don't. So maybe there might be another reason why the species evolved like that. Polly is asking if a venomous snake bit a zebra, could it kill it? Indeed, Polly, it definitely could. If a venomous snake, like a mamba, bit an elephant, it would likely be able to kill it. It certainly possesses enough potent venom, but there's always a but. An elephant's got a very thick skin, and a mamba's got very small fangs, frontal fangs. Also, the amount of venom that would be needed to be injected would be massive. So it depends on the size of the animal, depends on their physiology, it depends on the type of snake. But yes, indeed, a zebra could be killed by a venomous snake, like a cobra for instance, and sometimes animals do go that way, even predators. But then again, their immune system, their bodies are so tough that they do tend to fight it, probably a lot better than we do, and occasionally animals do survive snake bites. The other thing with snake bites is also, I think I read recently that on human bites about 40% of bites are dry bites or very little envenomation, even if it is from potent snakes. This is quite an amazing comparison to draw between these two elephants, just looking at their tusks. You can see the one on the left's tusks is much thicker, the girth is much thicker. It also looked like he snapped the right tusk, the tip. And that is something about the elephants here at Old Donyo, is they do tend to have, there's very good tusk genetics in this area. We often see elephants with very decent sized tusks around this area. Robert is asking, why are elephants called mega herbivores? Well, Robert, I think the mega, well, besides their size, such a large animal needing a massive amount of vegetation to sustain its bulk. You can imagine the nutrient quality in vegetation, and a vegetation only diet is much less comparative to, say, a high protein rich diet like meat eating animals have. Hence they have to eat a lot more to sustain such a large bulk. They also need to almost continuously eat, so hence elephants eat a lot in a day. They spend 15 hours or more, sometimes up to 20 hours a day feeding, with short rest periods in between. So their size, the size of herds, if they are found in large numbers, the fact that they can eat so much vegetation that they actually affect and change and modify an ecosystem, hence they are regarded as a mega herbivore or an ecosystem engineer. They can promote grass growth in very woody areas, so they affect the general vegetation cover of an area, and if left unchecked and unmanaged, elephants could even completely destroy the vegetation in an area, completely alter the ecosystem with dire effects, and not necessarily for the better. Sandra is asking, how much blood does an elephant's heart pump compared to a giraffe? That is a good question, Sandra. I think if we have to go with the liters per minute, then I believe an elephant is around 12. I know around 12 liters every minute goes through the ears, which is a ridiculous amount of blood. With us, it's about 3 or 4 liters. So it's about 3 times more than us, which is also in part why their ears are used to fan, and the thinner skin cools the blood that moves through the veins in the ears. But giraffe, I'm not sure. It would be more if I would take a guess. All I know is with giraffes have a very powerful heart, a very powerful vascular system, with natural seals to enable them to get blood throughout the entire body, all the way up to the brain. But I don't know in terms of quantity. Kelly is asking, what has been the most crazy or epic sighting you have ever had in your career? Kelly, that question is almost impossible to answer objectively today. I would have to say that it would probably have been a sighting around the dinner table with guests or tourists at night time after the safari. That would have probably been, I can't think of any particular instances currently, but I think when it comes to safaris, you often find that the sightings that you remember are the ones of the people that are on safari. But animal wise, there's been many, and it also depends. Like, I often find that sometimes you see some behavioral aspect that might seem mundane to most people, like a giraffe drinking or an elephant drinking, and then you just find yourself one day looking at it again and looking at it with a completely new approach and seeing it as something that you might have been seeing for the first time, and realizing how impressive and how amazing it is. And I think with sightings that is very important, is to keep reminding yourself how amazing it is and how fortunate you are to see things like that. I think watering holes certainly if I think about amazing sightings, it often plays out around watering holes. There's often more than one species involved, interaction. Watering holes kind of facilitates interaction, interspecies interaction. Look at the way that elephant's blowing on the inlet pipe there. While the giraffe is patiently waiting at the back. So it's very difficult. I don't know. Currently none in particular comes up. But just look at that. You can see, so that water in it. Oh, that is also quite interesting. And that's probably why he's drinking from there. Looks like he's got a cut, an old cut in his trunk tip that's healed. And if I'm looking carefully, it looks like I can almost see one of the nostrils running up, the opening, the tube of the nostril. Shame, that is not nice to see, but also not completely uncommon. And once again, like the zebra earlier, I would say that is very likely from a human-induced injury of some sorts, a past injury. The elephant's obviously healed up and looks like he's adapted to life with such an injury or alteration, unnatural alteration to its body. Now that could potentially also be from a snare, and that is one of the bad things about snares, is they become they become pervasive in certain areas if they're not checked, if it's not controlled, the poaching is not controlled. It might be done by people in an area looking for food, whether it is subsistence or whether it is to supply illegal meat markets in a more organized manner. Snares are put in vast numbers in certain areas with high animal traffic, and it's often set for smaller other animals, not for elephant, but occasionally elephant might feed and then unfortunately tend to get their trunk entangled in a snare and then injure themselves. You often find elephants with shorter trunks, and yeah, often you find they have cuts like that. Often, if they do tend to get their trunks out, they still bear the scars. So very sad to see. But it does happen. And as you can see, some animals tend to overcome it and adapt. I've even seen elephants with much shorter trunks, even elephants with no trunks due to snaring. They've learned to drink differently, they feed differently. I think with that, I might have answered Polly's question as well, asking could an elephant survive if it lost part or all of its trunk. Polly, yes indeed. I've seen elephants with almost no trunk, and literally cut off, like in line with the tips of the tusks, short tusks, even young elephants. It depends on what age the elephant is. I do think that would have a big impact on it, but they adapt, they learn. They'll just feed directly, they'll drink with their mouth. In some regions, depending on how water is available, that might be quite a determining factor for sure, especially for an animal that's newly acquired or lost its appendage. That might have devastating effects. but otherwise, given time and plentiful resources, they are very, very much able to adapt and overcome their dire circumstances. Oh, I got a bit of information from Wild at Heart saying that this elephant is actually often seen at Oldonyo, and it was a snare that caused damage to its trunk. Thanks for that, Wild at Heart. I'm very, very thankful for the information. And yes, it's sad to see, but it's great to see that he's overcome, and it doesn't seem to affect him in the slightest, actually. You can see he's turning his trunk in a sideways manner so that the open tube is at the top. He's slipping directly from the inlet, and you can see, even though it's got some nerve damage to the point where maybe that tip of the trunk is not fully as capable or dexterous as it would normally be, at least the main nerve does not seem to be injured, and the elephant still has the capability to slurp up water. Amazing. I think another thing is, like animals, unfortunately they don't have a choice of how they get affected by us, but it is interesting to see how they adapt. Alright, well, that was a great start to the afternoon at Oldonyo, but now we are with more elephants in another area. So from East Africa to Southern Africa at Tau, and here we have quite a variety of species. There's zebra, impala, Egyptian geese, there's a kudu in the background moving away, and elephant, of course. It looks like a very relaxing afternoon here at Tau. There's a lot of water still here for this time of the year. We are already well over halfway of our dry season. Oh, a waterbuck's coming in as well. It looks like a nice warm afternoon here at Tau. And what I like about this watering hole is there is always so many different species coming down. The hills in the back, there's often animals there. You can see that kudu is so relaxed, it's actually feeding out in the open. It's got a very impressive set of horns. It looks like one young impala male. Looks like he might be from the last season, and a few females. And yeah, his time is also coming. And his position within his herd would change. When the rain season comes, the impalas will have their new lambs, and then last year's lambs or young impala would have to move on and do their own thing. These animals don't seem bothered at all. They seem to just be focusing on having a drink. Here comes a nice big elephant. Polly is asking, do waterbucks graze or do they browse? Polly, waterbucks graze. They prefer like some very particular types of grasses in areas that have a lot of water. They are often found very near water areas, or marshy areas sometimes in some parts of Africa, but they do prefer grasses. Look, having said that, I've seen lots of animals that are regarded as browsers or grazers, depending on the time of the year and the situation. I've seen grazers browse and browsers graze. Oh, but from one pachyderm to another, I think let's head over to Founders quickly, where I heard we have some very special pachyderms. Amazing. What a beautiful view, and what a lot of water. I don't believe I have even seen founders recently after the rainy season. So this is amazing to see. You can see the hills are still rather green in the background. And there's a springbuck. Another lesser seen, well-known antelope. I do like to see white rhinos. These are white rhinos. I do like to see them drinking. You can see the ears are facing backwards. They do drink quite noisily, so they're trying to pick up on any sound that might come from the back, but they seem so relaxed. They look like they've had a good wallow or roll in the dust earlier. You can see from the reddish tinge on their skin, and if you compare that to the reddish soil on the ground, you can see why. Polly is saying, what gorgeous animals, and so lovely to see them with their horns. Indeed, Polly, it is. It really is. By the looks of it, these are still rather young rhinos moving together. But it is indeed a very special treat to be seeing them with their horns, something that we don't get to see often nowadays. And that is also a very special treat to see the animal in all its glory. You can see the second horn of these animals are also not that large or long yet, so these are youngish animals moving together in a group, probably pushed away from their mothers. Mothers might have new ones. They are social. But what a treat indeed. Kenny asked, what is the coolest bird I've ever seen? Kenny, that I don't know. I really do not know. I've seen quite a lot of cool birds. And there's quite a lot of cool birds that I still would like to see. So I do not know, to be honest. I do like seeing the raptors, of course. But then again, also, I like to have the challenge of trying to identify the smaller, drabbier looking little birds that never tend to sit still. So I don't know. Oh, I also like owls. Owls are also a very, very interesting bird. But yeah, difficult to say what would be the coolest bird to see. I think a bird that I haven't seen often, that I've recently saw in the wild, is a African shell duck. Just quite a unique bird. Quite a pretty duck. That was quite cool. Wouldn't know if it was the coolest, but quite cool. James Hotham is asking, if rhino horn wasn't cut to save their lives, how long could they get? James, that is a good question. That is a tricky question to answer. Generally speaking, rhino horn grows about 2 to 3 inches annually, or roughly 10 centimeters annually, or close to that, depending on the rhino, the diet, of course, the genetics, the age. In the past, there have been rhino horns recorded of over 1 meter long, and on rare occasions nowadays you still do get to see rhinos with horns that approach those lengths. Ooh, look at that. We have a Fleming grimace. That is very cool. You can see it's moving. White rhino with the characteristically flat lip. See the big nostrils right on the end of the face. So it probably picked up a scent there and pulled the lips back. That way it can get a little bit of a better idea of the chemical compounds inherent within that scent and determine certain characteristics. Might be the scent of another rhino. But as this rhino is moving off, I think let's head back over to Tau and see what's happening there. Oh, back to busy Tau. All of these animals, those elephants that just come in, they look a little bit confused.
Hi, I'm Cedric Dold, Wild Earth presenter and private guide. I'd love you to join me on safari. In September, I'll be at Walgevonden for a beautiful spring safari. And in November, I'll be tracking Wild Earth's famous leopards here in the Sabi Sands. Come and share the wildlife, the stories, and the adventure with me. Book now and let's go on safari.
At Wild Earth, we believe every story has the power to create change. That's why we've launched the Wild Earth Impact Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to conservation and social impact. By showcasing conservation stories, we can change lives, protect nature, and empower communities. We have partnered with Empowers Africa to accept tax-deductible donations from US donors. Your donation will help fund critical programs that support our mission. Join us and be part of the change.
Would you like to know the difference between a male and a female wildebeest? You can ask me questions like this in real time. Our safaris are live and interactive here in the heart of Africa. Join me on Safari Live and connect with nature.
Wild Earth Explorers, wilder together. We know that adverts pay our bills, but you don't necessarily like them. So, this is a fantastic way to stop being interrupted. Sign up today and you'll get instant access to wildlife. 24/7, ad-free, live and on demand. No pesky commercials, no rude interruptions, just wild Africa exactly as it unfolds. Wild Earth Explorers, wilder together.
Go and what to do, and of all the other animals around. let's have a look. It looks like the elephant in the water looks like a young male. And the one on the right there looks like quite a large bull elephant. But then there's this young elephant. You can see he's kind of reaching out to the elephant on the water's edge. And then the bull is also kind of following that elephant in a little way. So if I didn't know any better, I would say this elephant might be a male because she looks quite large, but I'm sure it is a female. And with the age of that young elephant with her, which is likely her calf or offspring, I'd also say that she is probably wouldn't mind some of the attention from a big bull elephant like that. Maybe at this time but it looks like a female elephant, quite a large, or an older cow. I think that's why the bigger bull is following her. He's just curious to investigate and see if there might be any potential there. And of course the young elephant in the back is kind of awkwardly standing around, not sure what's happening. Candace is asking how come the water bucks are in the water feeding on that plant. Good question, Candace. Water bucks don't mind wading into the water, unlike some of the other antelope. And one of the advantages of that is they can access food that other antelopes cannot. Often some of these grasses growing on the muddy banks in the water or in a standing shallow watery area, some of them are quite nutritional. They're still green, they're soft, hence very alluring to an antelope that likes some new green grass, especially during the dry period of the year. And water bucks, with their preference and adaptations, they are able to access that, unlike some other antelope. It seems like there's quite a lot. Those lips are just moving, gobbling up as much as possible. Another adaptation, waterbuck, like all other antelopes, are a ruminant, so they can eat and graze now as much as possible, and then later they can settle down, regurgitate, and further digest their food. Polly's saying the bird life is alive here at Tau, and so lovely to see. Indeed, Polly, there is what I believe, now it looks like something different right in front of the waterbuck. Not sure, but I did see what seemed like a lesser moorhen earlier, and there were quite a few here. I know this watering hole has some particularly nice birds coming in at some point, shell ducks, there's some Egyptian geese, but I'm not sure what this one might be wading on the grass. It might be a heron of some sorts. I thought I saw a longer bill there. But yes, definitely some amazing birds around here. There's also another duck there at the back, maybe look like a teal of some sort. Kenny is saying, how does the elephant's digestive system work compared to the waterbuck? Well, Kenny, elephants are they're quite an ancient type of mammal, so they have quite a very long digestive system that's relatively poor developed compared to waterbuck. Hence they need a lot of fiber to aid their digestion. They have a single chambered stomach, and they eat, and the food goes in, kind of ferments in there, and then slowly moves its way through the digestive tract all the way, and eventually they utilize only about 40% of what they eat, and most of the rest come out the back. That's quite a lot of waste. If you compare, a large elephant can have up to 300, at least 200 to 150 to 200 kilograms of wet material a day. That's a lot. That means like 60 kilograms or more that can come out of unused plant material, undigested material, or not fully digested material, which in turn gives gives an opportunity to other smaller creatures. Hence, an elephant can be regarded as a moving ecosystem. They aid seed dispersal that way. Even though the digestive tract is not most efficient, maybe it does soften the linings, the outer linings of certain hard shelled seeds, and it also lands, when the seeds come out the other end, it lands right within a pile of manure, which aids its initial stages to grow. Whereas a ruminant, like the waterbuck, have a 4-chambered stomach. It's a complex process of eating and regurgitating and rechewing food. Then it moves through the different compartments of the stomach, separating the different materials and processes, and essentially powers that animal's metabolic system through the breakdown of certain microbial aids that's found within their digestive system. So it's much more energy efficient, it's quicker. They can get a lot more energy from the food that they eat. And it's much shorter. And the turnaround process is also much quicker. It also enables them to get rest, and they don't have to eat at such a constant rate like elephants have to. Spasi Yankov is asking what aquatic plants are on the diet of waterbuck, and do they have similar diets with Egyptian geese and elephants? Spaz, that's a difficult question. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. They mostly go after the grasses, the aquatic grasses or the wetter grasses, but then again also they might go after plants that grow within the water, like certain fern species, or maybe even water lilies. I'm not 100% sure about that. Whatever other plants might be growing in the water, I do think that there's probably some overlap between them and elephants, and maybe even Egyptian geese, as Egyptian geese also have a more plant-based diet in aquatic environments. But I don't think that is something that I don't know to what extent, and I don't know exact species, to be honest. I think it just depends on on what they can get where, and in some cases it would definitely probably overlap. But the exact differences I do not know. Would be interesting to know though. Would be an interesting investigation to undertake. Elephants, on the other hand, elephants is also an interesting one. Well, I guess any species can. They do often eat alien plants that come in, whether it's good for them or not. But elephants, they tend to love the stuff that they shouldn't be eating. Well, they often have preference for things that's probably not as healthy as their natural diet. Like for instance maize fields, which of course creates quite a bit of a headache for communities surrounding protected areas. You can see those elephants in the water is clearly stuffing themselves with quite a lot of water plants, whatever those may be. And I'm also not 100% sure if what the water buck is busy eating is the same, just maybe a little bit more weathered down or a little bit more withered, or something completely different, which it might also be. And that young elephant still seems a little bit unsure of what's happening around him. Doesn't know whether he should go into the water I'd love to see. I wonder if he's going to back into the water. He's shaking some thing that looks like food, looks like grass. He was vigorously shaking it. It looks almost like he lost it there. Interesting. Jack is asking if there are any fish in the water. Jack, I'm sure there is. Not sure exactly about particular species. Likely some catfish. Not sure what else. There's some birds, what seemed like that teals kind of chasing each other off or racing away out of the screen. That was quite interesting. Wonder what happened there. But yeah, Jack, not too sure about exact species of fish. I think it would also depend on like water cycles and dry and wet seasons, and yeah, and also new water flowing into the watering hole from different areas, so access to other nearby water bodies. I guess that would all depend and determine the species. I don't know. I haven't seen any fish here myself, but I'm fairly sure there should be some catfish. At the very least, they do tend to do quite well in a muddier spot like this. I haven't seen any fish eagles around, to be honest. So maybe there is, maybe there isn't as much as there used to be. Maybe the last time this watering hole dried out, it dried out properly to the point where not much fish could survive. That also affects it. But then again, there's so much rain this last season in all of these areas. I'm very surprised to see that there's still so much water here at Tau. It looks like it's still, the level is still relatively high. Animals are coming, they're drinking from the edge. They don't have to walk all the way down to get access to muddy water. Lots of zebra coming in, which is good to see. They're always nice to see, and zebra, if they are nearby, will come and drink. Kenny's asking if there's crocs in there. Kenny, yes, well, there were crocs in here for sure. There were 1 or 2 in the past, or 3 or 4, and like I've seen them try and attempt to catch some larger animals, but I haven't actually seen them catch any, and I've also not seen any particular restrictive fear in any of the antelopes that come down here. The zebra, the waterbuck tend to regularly wade into the water like this here, even though the crocs sometimes swim around. The crocs that I've seen here, they weren't that big, to be honest. Like, yeah, maybe a warthog might be a little bit more at risk, but I haven't really seen them go after any of the larger antelope, or seen any of the larger antelope being particularly wary of them. So maybe the crocs come and go. Maybe they have gone and left the area mostly. Maybe they've only come back here due to some water restrictions elsewhere, or maybe it's just purely the fact that these animals just are so aware of their presence, and the fact that they are not as big and maybe not considered a big risk currently. But yes, theoretically any waterbuck in a water body with crocs would be at risk. It does depend on the size of the croc. With animals, it's always risk versus reward, and a smallish croc will likely not go after a large animal such as a waterbuck if it can subsist on easier prey like fish, which is very well adapted for. There we go, look, that elephant looks like he is having the best time ever. And look at that, he is just stuffing himself, slowly chewing. Oh, there we go, there is a crocodile. Well done to our zoomies for finding that, thank you so much. If you look just on the bank in between the elephant at the back, the one in front, there is a crocodile out of the water, busy basking. I can see one clearly, there might be another one, but there we go. Does not seem particularly big, and as we can see, none of the other animals seem particularly worried. Depending on the animal size and the crocodile size, generally speaking, the crocodiles, the at-risk factor, or the risk factor involved with the crocodile, generally grows as the crocodile grows. The more brazen they are, the more capable they are, the larger prey they'll go after. But for most of their life, and the largest part of their diet, mostly consists of fish. Let's see. Sandra's asking, how much does a waterbuck need to drink? Sandra, I do recall reading about it once, and from what I know, like, it is quite a lot compared to other antelopes. I can't remember an exact number, but I don't know why. I have something like 40 liters a day in my mind. They do have quite a bit of a higher water requirement than the average antelope. They also have a longer coat and fur. But they'll generally come down a couple of times a day. If it is available. Just look at that, so many animals. Still so much water around. There's a grey heron in front, that's also nice to see. Oh, I just had a look and saw that it's not nearly as much maybe as I thought. Waterbuck is not not as much as 40 liters, I guess, on a hot day potentially, but drinking wise they reckon it's around 9 to 10 liters a day, which is a lot. It's a lot of water. I mean, if you think about it, for the average human, 1.5 to 3 liters on a day, depending. Oh, there's a wildebeest. That's nice to see. And that is very, very nice to see. It's a nice, decent sized herd waterbuck as well. You can still see, so that does look like some water lilies there. That's been growing there, and I'm assuming that's what the elephants were eating. On the other side, this side I can see it's a little bit clearer for some reason, but yeah, so definitely elephants would go after that. Looks like one wildebeest. Looks like a large male. And in bare patches of soil, but for mostly the area is still quite covered in vegetation, which is unique. In the past I've seen it this time of the year mostly bare. And then of course the patches of soil exposed is quite whitish in color, which begs the question from Kelly, asking, the soil is so white, what could it be? Kelly, that's a good question. I'm not exactly sure about the geological aspects of tile in an in-depth sense, but my best guess would be that there might be quite a bit of calcite in that soil, presence of calcite, or lime. It might be high in lime. It looks a little bit muddy, so it's probably from past deposits, maybe more extensive water coverage in the past, or maybe some calcium deposits, and lime deposits, which is usually lower down. It might have been washed out between the rocky hills in this region, and from there washed down into the valley, where it kind of deposited due to water action. But exactly what the reason might be, I'm not too sure. I'll have to have a look. That was quite interesting to see. That young waterbuck kind of waded into the water and then decided that it's too deep to go down. And I'm wondering what it wanted to do or where it was going, because I saw its front legs almost completely disappeared. So maybe there is a bit of a decision, well, either pending or a decision made regarding the depth of water that it will wade in. But they're almost staring at these grasses on the opposite end longingly. You can see the moorhens there in the foreground, moving about the patches of grass on the exposed muddy ridges. The zebras are moving away from the water. Mostly females in this herd. I haven't seen a male waterbuck here today. Often you see some beautiful large males here as well. So it's clearly the place to be today. But something is drawing their attention on the opposite bank. Talking about waterbuck, Sandra's saying she just loves how fluffy they are. And also asking if it is just the way they look or if it's got a purpose. Generally speaking, Sandra, most of, oh, look at that. These guys are, that's quite nice to see, quite fun to see. This is something we don't actually often see. Wildebeest covering themselves in mud. But that's some good thick mud that's available there. And these guys are getting to a point where, as the drier season starts to shift, they will be starting to look for areas to proclaim as their own and protect. But they're adorning their horns with some mud, their body. That's probably a bit multi-purpose, but it does make their horns look thicker, bigger, draw more attention for the ladies, for sure. It might also just be that it helps them with cooling down and regulating heat. Even though those horns are hard and strong, they are still very much a part of regulating temperature. But this has been a good check-in here at Tau. I think a lot of these animals are heading off to shadier spots, so let's head over somewhere else and see what's happening there. Jack's camp at the Makgadikgadi Pans in Botswana. For a moment there I forgot where we were heading to, but what an amazing sight. Look at that, some palm trees in the back. What I believe is a pied crow drinking from the water pan. Some young wildebeest, some older wildebeest, some zebra. Very relaxed wildebeest, more than enough water. What a sight. This is a spectacular sight. Much different from what we've been seeing all morning. And a nasty wildebeest that's chasing the crow. No, that's just a joke. That those two crows, probably a pair. That's quite interesting to see with all these animals around, but you can see water's readily available, so, and it's nice and open, so it's a great spot for animals like wildebeest to lay down in the middle of the day. bask a bit in the sun, chew the cud, and ruminate while taking a rest. It's open, there's lots of animals. Chances of a predator here sneaking up on an unsuspecting wildebeest is quite small. But then again, of course, things would change a little bit once you move into the tree line in the distance. But it does give quite a bit of a different feeling with those high palm trees rising on the horizon at the back. And it also looks like there's still quite a bit of grass cover, even though it's not green anymore. And there's just animals everywhere you look. What a sight. Wildebeest looks a little bit dustier, a little bit paler than the ones we saw at Tau now. And that might just be because of the hue. You can see there's still quite a few younger wildebeest from the last season, I'm assuming. Their horns haven't quite started turning yet. But indeed, there's a lot of animals here. Looks like this area can be quite dusty if it's dry. There's a blacksmith lapwing flying in front. Oh, and I see it's very shallow. Okay. I mean, I thought it would be shallow, but I did not expect the water level to be that shallow. I mean, that's hardly any water, even though it looks like quite a bit of coverage. It would be enough to drink. And have a look. Wildebeest facing all directions. Mothers and calves laying together. They're literally covering every single angle one can. And now these would be different herds, different groups. More palms there in the back. Very large herd. What are those? Are those also, or are those zebras? It's also wildebeest. They are quite well adapted to handle the heat. They tend to be out in the middle of the day, often wildebeest and zebra are two of the species that we see regularly out in the open in the heat of the day. But that is a very decent sized herd there. Any attempt to count or guess at the number, my guess would be as good as anybody's. But there would definitely be quite a few hundred here, I'd say. It's incredible to see so much life around the water. And of course, water is life. And the best time of the day to see that life is in the middle of the day when it's warm. The drier seasons in southern Africa, or winter time as some call it. In Africa there's basically, well, for most of Africa there's just a wet and a dry season. The animals come and go as they please to drink. Interesting to see the difference in behavior between the different watering holes of the animals around it. Obviously over here it's kind of like right there. The grazing grounds is nearby, so the animals don't have to move far. They're very relaxed. They have their dusty spots to dust bathe, treat themselves with for skin conditions and skin parasites. Don't have to move far. It looks like there's a little bit of greenery in and amongst the grass, so still quite a bit of food. With some of the other watering holes we've seen this morning, it seems like they all at points where animals come to drink and have a drink, and then they move off to their grazing fields or grazing areas. But just judging from the very relaxed nature of all these animals, I'd say it's good to assume that there is not a lot of, or there's not any predator around. I do see there's a bird sitting in that tree at the top, potentially a roller. There's one wildebeest on its own, a little bit further away from the group it seems. Of course, at this level, safety in numbers is definitely assumed. As you can see, they're not checking up as regularly. Those are some really large palms, very, very nice to see. My guess would be northern Nala palm. And they are some truly unique specimens. Certainly lends a very unique character to this landscape. You can hear the grey go-away birds going in the background. I mean, if I were these animals, who wouldn't want to? I wouldn't want to move at all. Ah, there's some sacred ibises below that tree on the little island. Oh, there's an extensive body of water here. The more that you look, the more you see. Now I'm sure these animals will start to move a little bit later. You can see is these little groups coming down on their own. Related groups will come have their time to drink, but often with large groups of animals like this, like the movement from one prompts the others to do, and now you can see there's quite a few getting up. More and more getting up, well, at least in this section, which makes me think they've already been laying down for quite a bit, chewing their cud.
Can you hear that sound? The way it grows, the way it calls you to come alive. Can you feel the rhythm? The way it beats with the land? Do you feel alive again? Or maybe you never left. You don't just visit the wild, you return to it.
The Wild Earth Impact Foundation is a non-profit that uses the power of wildlife storytelling as a force for good. We create sustainable development projects that showcase conservation stories, empower people, and inspire environmental action. As a registered South African PBO, you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Wild Earth Impact Foundation. To find out more, visit our website.
Hello, my name is Eric Barnard, a Wild Earth presenter and private guide. My favorite animal is an elephant. When they get close to the vehicle, there's always some form of conversation. Good evening. How do you do? I think the most important one is the vibe. If there's a good vibe, everyone's having fun. Look at them, look at them. I think those are aspects that really do make a great safari.
Look at that particular frog.
Starting to become that independent leopard now. And these 10 cubs belong to 4 different females.
They sometimes come and say hi.
Hi there, my name is Kerry Dupree, wildlife presenter and guide. What I love the most about guiding is being able to share my love for wildlife and nature with my guests. Very exciting to find those cheetah boys on a kill. Being passionate about your job makes the world of a difference because your guide definitely sets the tone of every adventure.
But I think it is getting to that time of the day. Potentially it's getting a little bit hot for the animals now. Been spending quite a bit of time in the sun, ruminating. And now they might be moving off to areas with more ample shade. But what an incredible sight here at Jack's Camp, Magadi Pans. What a uniquely beautiful area. We've had such a treat this afternoon with all of the variety and species. Some nice groups of animals, lots of action or lots of life coming down to the water. So this afternoon has been a brilliant indication of why we like to watch what's happening around the watering holes at the middle of the day. It is the busy time of the day. There's always something happening, and it's always very, very interesting to see animals interacting and acting naturally around watering holes. From elephants to mixed groups to wildebeest and zebras. Feel very, very fortunate to have been able to guide our viewers through this afternoon. And as these wildebeest are looking to walk off and walking off, I'd like to thank all our viewers. Thank you for all the great questions, and thank you for making me learn quite a lot, and thank you for watching. And be sure to join us again next time. But I'd say from all of us here live at the Watering Hole in Wild Earth, we bid you a good farewell for the afternoon.
Woo!